Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Sophie Summers, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into laser hair removal and tattoo removal. Now, I'm a firm believer that a little knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. Now, whilst the internet is a purveyor of intense amounts of information, sometimes it can be very confusing and equally as misleading. So I believe in going to the experts in the field to get their opinions and probably to demystify some of the processes and add a little bit of reality to it at the same time. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be talking to Paul Davis. And now, Paul is from Skin Beautiful and has over 15 years of experience in this particular industry. And I'm sure, like me, you're going to find this interview very fascinating. Hi Paul, thank you very much for inviting me over today to talk about all the things to do with laser and tattoos. But I think to get started, if I may, is just can you give us an overview of your practice and all the things that to avoid and what to look for, in particular when you want to consider going for IPL or laser treatment?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much for coming over. It's brilliant. It's a real opportunity, so thank you very, very much. But we've been going now for about sort of 12, 13 years. I can't remember the year exactly. I think it was 2012 that we opened as a company. And we've worked in various locations. We started off in sort of Worthing, that area, and then we went to Spain for a couple of years. And we've been over here now for about 5 or 6 years, and at the moment we're based in Felpham in Bognor Regis. It's a skin and laser clinic, and it's sort of a bit like what it says on the tin. So it's skin treatments by laser and also with cryotherapy, which is where we're freezing off sort of benign lesions. So what do we do? I suppose our core services would be hair removal, which is very, very popular. Tattoo removal, which is the treatment we very first started doing, and I think I did my first tattoo removal myself 15 years ago now, which seems like another lifetime, and it was very different back in those days, and there's a lot more understanding now, even in this sort of 10-15 year period, about what can make it a lot safer and a lot faster to get rid of tattoos. Over the years we've developed it, so we've brought in other treatments. We mentioned cryotherapy, where we can get rid of things like warts and verrucas and skin tags and the old dreaded age and sunspots that we get from too much sun damage. So, you know, it's a real mixed bag that we do now. It's about 15 treatments all in all.
Fantastic, so that's a lot of treatments in there. I think what I always find interesting is there's a lot of myths and a lot of sort of, I suppose, misinformation out there around regarding particularly laser treatment for hair removal for males, basically. Yeah. So maybe you can, I suppose, bust a few of those myths for me? Yeah,
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And the internet's been brilliant, isn't it, on information, but it's like, how do you filter through what's the right information and what's the wrong information? And I completely agree. I mean, even for myself, we've been treating people in the trans LGBT community probably for about 10 years now. And obviously there are differences, exactly as you're saying, between treatment expectations and what's actually deliverable. So there are a lot of myths out there, things like, for example, if people, when they start taking HRT, for example, if they're going to transition, that will actually help with the hair removal for men that are transforming. And it's not always the case, because it is a hormone replacement therapy. Right. So that can actually spark more hair's growth. Wow. As opposed to stopping the hair's growth. And some people it doesn't, it has the opposite effect. So it is a mixed bag. We have to look at it individually. So with hair removal there are a number of factors. You're looking at a skin type, because when we fire light it heats up in the skin. So the darker the skin type, the more careful we have to be, because not only are we looking to kill the follicle, but we've got to be careful that we don't overcook the skin and burn the person. Right. So we're looking at two things. Ultimately, we're looking at killing the bulb by cooking it. And it's a bit like, I would say, how do you kill a hair follicle? It's a bit like baking a cake. So, my favourite occupation. Absolutely, and I like eating them. But when you bake a cake, if the recipe said, for example, put a cake in the oven at 180 for 20 minutes, you might think, well, actually, if I put it up at 250 for 10 minutes, I can cook it quicker, because it's a higher temperature. And that's very similar with what goes on in a lot of places in the UK with hair removal, because people don't have the right understanding or experience. And what they're having happen, even with good kit, is that they're basically burning the outside but they're not cooking that cake, i.e. the bulb at the bottom, which can be sort of 2 to 3, 4 millimetres down depending on the area of the body. So they're not actually just damaging the follicle rather than killing the germ and stem cells, which is ultimately what we want to kill to stop the hair coming through.
Because there are a lot of myths out there, 10, 12 sessions and you're clear for life, which I know from personal experience is absolute rubbish. But maybe you can put some of the actual reasons why that doesn't actually work.
Yeah, I mean, it varies person per person. So, for example, we mentioned skin types before, and in the UK and globally now, we look at people in various skin types from 1 to 6. So 1 would be someone very pale skin, almost white hair, sort of blue eyes, and then you're going up to sort of Afro-Caribbean Africans, sort of more 5, 6. And the hair follicles change as well. So we have to look at each follicle. The hair follicle has to be dark.
Yeah.
There's a lot of myths out there with people and the manufacturers claiming that they can do blonde hairs and white hairs and grey hairs. The fact is, the science says otherwise.
Right.
It's not rocket science, it's laser science, but it is science and we have to follow that. And the reason is, we can only kill follicles if they've got the right amounts of melanin in, so the light follows down the shaft and finds the bulb, which holds the stem germ cells, ultimately kills that to stop the follicle growing out again. If a hair follicle is anything other than dark, so if it's grey, red, white, whatever, blonde, it doesn't have that amount in, and you can hit it till the cows come home and it's not going anywhere. So that's an interesting one.
So not everybody can be treated.
Not everybody can be treated, no. And when you start off on your journey, you should have a proper consultation. And I find many clients say, oh, really, do I really have to? Can I not just start straight away because I'm really keen to get going? And we do it for a reason. One is it's a legal requirement because we've got to check you don't have an allergic reaction or a burn to treatment, and we're refining our settings. So it really helps from that point of view. But we need to ascertain whether you're suitable for treatment. That's really, really important.
So on average, what would you expect? I mean, it's managing expectations.
100%, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of clinics out there. You've probably seen the adverts, which is all unlimited hair removal, £1,000 all in 6 sessions. And you've got to be careful because it's clever marketing. Because a lot of people will say, they go, 6 sessions, £1,000 all done. They're not actually saying that. What they're saying is you can have 6 sessions for X amount of pounds. That doesn't necessarily mean the hair's going to be completely gone. And I would doubt very much it would be very gone, all gone after 6 sessions. You'll find, I would say, from the very first treatment, you should see a significant reduction. Normally about 2 weeks after treatment as the hairs start to full out, because they don't sort of drop out like you're dropping a shopping bag on the floor. They tend to look like they're growing out. And occasionally people can even pull a follicle on their face and it will come away in their hands. But normally I'd say you see it more after a shower or a bath, something like that. You've rubbed them with a towel, you don't even notice them coming out. How many sessions? Yeah, I've been avoiding answering that.
No, we'll come on to that. I don't want to put you
No, it's a really good question. I would say it depends on the skin type and the amount of hair someone's got. So, for example, the hair on my face is very, very dense. Somebody else, the density can be far less. So if you're talking high density, I would say at least 10 to 12 sessions, especially for guys, maybe more, because if we got, say, a lady that came in, say, skin type 2, the amount of follicles they've got are probably a tenth of a guy that's coming in. So we're talking about a lot more treatment. Also, and what's worth pointing out is we can only kill each follicle when they're in a certain phase. Your hair follicles go through certain phases. There's the anagen phase, the catagen phase, the telogen phase. Now these are, anagen phase is the growth phase, and then you have a resting phase, and so on. So it will only kill when it's in the anagen phase. So for example, we could come in, we'll treat all the hairs in one go, but there'll only be a certain amount that are in the correct phase to be killed. Hence why it takes more and more treatments. And then when you've got more and more hair density, you've got more and more treatments to find. So if, let's say it took a lady, we would normally say 8 to 10 sessions. For a guy, I would probably say nearer sort of 12 to 20, And even then, you'll never get 100% hair removal.
Yeah, obviously, particularly people of my age, we've got quite a few white and grey hairs.
Yeah.
So there has to be a different solution from that. So it's all about managing expectations.
100%.
any difference depending on which part of the body you were treating?
100%, yeah, definitely. And even on the schedule of treatments, again, you'll find a lot of places, you know, you'll go along, you'll get a deal and you're doing your full body and it's great and everyone's going every 4 weeks. It's not a really good idea. Different parts of the body are in the anagen phase at different times. So, for example, the hairs on a head, constantly growing. They can be in the anagen phase for a year at a time, a follicle there. If we compare that to, say, our armpits or our legs or bikinis, very, very different. So we would say if you were having hair removal in your legs, I'd be looking at every 12 weeks. If we're looking at our armpits, I'd probably say every 6 weeks. And if we're looking at our lip or chin, I'd probably be saying every 4 weeks. And it's for good reason, because what you don't want ultimately is be paying for treatments when nothing's happening. Yeah. So by having treatments every 4 weeks, you just end up paying for more treatments, not losing more hair. So you need to find somewhere that understands that. And we didn't understand that, because when we first bought equipment, you know, going back 15 years ago, you go with what the manufacturer tells you and you've taught in your training courses.
Interesting. Is there things that you can do before a treatment and after a treatment to make it that bit more effective?
Good question. Always, I say, shave the night before. Never shave the day of treatment, and that's for 2 reasons. One, by shaving the area, we want to encourage the growth stage. Now, I know a lot of people will say to me, my God, you want me to shave? That's going to make it worse. It's an old wives' tale. That is a myth. It will encourage it to enter the anagen phase. Doesn't mean to say it will definitely go into it, but we want to do everything we can to encourage that, because ultimately, if it's not in that stage, the hair follicle's not going anywhere. So that's a good thing you can do. We also need the follicles to be for treatment about 1 millimetre long. So by shaving the day or night before, it's more likely to be the required length. And also, ultimately, again, when we're shaving, we're chafing the skin. So if we're doing it the night before, it has overnight to recover more. So when you have laser, you're less likely to experience a reaction.
Oh, fantastic. What about afterwards, after the treatment? Because I think you have to do some sort of preparation before you do the laser treatment. Do you put some sort of numbing cream or something like that on?
You can do. We don't tend to. We would sort of chill the area with ice packs. Yeah. So cool the area down, because we were saying before about cooking the skin, and we don't want to cook the skin, we want to heat the follicle. Yeah. So by cooling it, we can go higher with the fluence. And fluence, which is the power, if you like, you know, the heat we're going to, is key. We need to get that hair follicle to 70 degrees, and it's below, you know, the epidermis and the dermis. So we've got to get it to that temperature. So we need to go on a fairly high fluence. So people are going to feel it. It shouldn't be out and out painful, but you're going to feel it. So if we said on an ideal setting, you'd probably feel a pain threshold of between sort of 3 and 5 out of 10. Right. You know, so it's manageable.
Depending on your pain threshold. Yes.
Absolutely. And then we'd put cooling on afterwards with the ice packs again, and we use a gel that we put on through the treatment, which is kept in the refrigerator. So all these things are all about cooling the area, minimising any discomfort, minimising any potential risk of burns, but keeping it that you can hit the required temperature as well. It's a balancing act.
Yeah. Is there any possible side effects at all?
Yes, you can do. Some people could experience erythema, where, you know, your skin can go red and blotchy and things like that. I would say it's rare. It shouldn't be happening every time. You'd probably come out with the skin slightly red, but it would go down within sort of 5-10 minutes, that sort of thing. Applying a nice cool aloe vera, which we offer to people while they're here, also helps as well.
Oh, fantastic. I think that's covered everything on the laser. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
One of the questions, or one of the things we hear about a lot, is because there's a, how can I put it, beauty industry is famous for making outrageous claims. And I'd say the typical one we hear is 6 sessions all in, and it's not 6 sessions, it'll be completely gone. You will lose less and less hairs every time you come, so it's getting the space right, the treatment gaps between treatments, so that's absolutely key. The hairs have got to be dark. But the other thing is what type of laser or IPL we deal with. There's a lot of manufacturers out there that make wild claims now about how diode lasers or ND YAG lasers are far better than traditional IPLs or E-light systems. And this may be going over some people's heads, so I apologise about this.
I think it's very important to know, because there's a lot of mystery.
100%. A lot of it is the understanding. So, for example, you could have the best laser, most expensive laser in the world, But if you're not getting the treatment schedules right, you're not going to get the required right results. If the fluence isn't at the right level, you're not going to get the required results. If, for example, with an IPL, you don't have what is called pulse widths, right? And that's basically the shot of light, so that it's got to go in for a period of time. Not that we can sell, because it's all in nanoseconds, really, really quick. You won't be able to cook the follicle long enough. So there's a lot of things to understand, but one of the biggest myths out there is diode lasers will give you much better results than IPLs. It's not true. You know, 1 joule of energy on a diode or a YAG or an IPL is 1 joule of energy. A bit like if you're driving a Ferrari or you're driving an Aston Martin or you're driving a Ford Mondeo at 30 miles an hour, they're all doing 30 miles an hour. They're all delivering the same. You know, you might get there a bit quicker and it might be a lot cooler doing it in a Ferrari, but ultimately, if you're doing 50 miles an hour, you're doing 50 miles an hour. And that's the same thing again. It's the understanding of the equipment, it's the understanding of the body and treating it right. That's why I'd always say you've got to go to somebody with experience.
I think that you've hit on a point there that sort of runs through a lot of questions that I get asked. And typically when I get asked is something that's similar along the lines of you there. I don't have the technical knowledge, but the one that I've always been asked lately is, what are these home ones like? You know, these
great questions.
Because there's lots on social media, for instance.
100%, and they're getting more and more popular. I think they raised their heads around 2006, and they vary. I mean, some are laser, very few are laser. A lot are actually LED bulbs and more flash lamp type things. Yeah. I think they have a place. You know, again, the principles apply, so the timescales apply. You know, it's got to be dark hairs. I talk to people that swear by them, that have used them. When you say, has your hair gone? They'll say no, but it keeps it at bay. Yeah. What I think is tending to happen is that they're damaging follicles slightly. So then they'll say, so I'm getting, you know, the hair's sort of gone a little bit finer, but it's not stopping the hair going. Right. The schedules they're using, they're telling people to use them daily and weekly, go against the science completely. Right. They're classed as class 1. So when we're using equipment such as we have, that's a class 4 laser. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be licensed, things like that, to use this sort of equipment. So, yeah, I think they have their place. Are they as good as spending 20, 30,000 on a laser? No.
I suppose logically you wouldn't expect the same result.
No, exactly. But yeah, they have a place.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I think that's a nice myth buster.
Yeah.
If somebody goes and buys one of those and thinks, well, I can get rid of all the hair and all my body for a fraction of the cost.
Absolutely.
Again, it's managing those expectations.
Definitely. I mean, if you could, we'd buy them ourselves, you know, and use them here.
That's a very good answer. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that you alluded to it earlier on. It was about the sort of experience required. How would somebody that was looking for laser treatment distinguish between one possible side?
Yeah, really good question. It's difficult, I would say. Obviously reviews are good, but reviews can be fixed. You know, yes. When we started, we probably did what a lot of people were back in the early days and asked friends and family to put a few reviews on. What we are now is organic growth, so yeah. Which basically means people, when they come for treatment, if they've liked it, they put a review on. But yeah, it's experience. How do you define experience? You've got to go through a few pains to get the experience, and we did in the early days, because we were going through our manufacturer's experience that was saying, yes, you can do every 4 weeks, and yes, it's going to be completely pain-free, and you know, you can put it at a low level, and yes, of course you can treat someone at a much lower fluence. The hairs won't go properly. You'll kill a few, but you won't get rid of many. But it makes these nice claims for manufacturers that can say, our system is completely pain-free, our system is this, that and the other. And it's only through experience that you actually find out, well, actually, no, that's not strictly true. I need to pre-cool the skin. I need to up the fluence levels and pre-cool afterwards, and then I'm getting great results. So I think you're going to have to ask people, how long have you been trading? You know, look at the reviews and go from there. You know, recommendations is probably the best one.
I'm sure that you get quite a few people in here for tattoo removal.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to know how that actually works, because you know, you have one of those on, they're permanent.
Absolutely. Well, if we sort of go slightly back, what happens when we get a tattoo? So what happens when we get a tattoo is, obviously we're in a studio, they're using a tattoo gun with the inks going in. How does it affect our body? So the ink is actually below the epidermis in the dermis. Okay, and when it first goes in, your body tries to reject it. But your body sees ink as a photomechanical object. So try not to get too technical here. And your body's not designed to reject photomechanical objects. So it's like, what do I do, says the body. So it sends out these microphalanges and fibroblasts to get rid of the tattoo. But because it's not capable of doing it, it holds on to it. And that's why our tattoos stay where they are. It's actually your immune system holding on to your tattoo.
So it must be a challenge to get rid of it then.
Absolutely. So what we do is we fire light at it. Okay, so these lasers, even though they might feel when you're doing tattoo like it's a burn, they're actually firing light, which then turns into energy. And if you imagine the ink particle being like a balloon inside the body, and then you put a hose into it, turn the tap on, the water's coming in, gets bigger and bigger, big explosion. Okay, and that's when you can feel the pain of, when you're getting zapped by a tattoo, or with a laser on your tattoo. It's exploding the ink particle into much smaller particles. And then the body says, well, these are much smaller. They're still photomechanical, but they're much smaller. Let's have a go at flushing these out. And it's your body's immune system that then starts flushing everything out of your system via the bloodstream, via the lymphatic system. So the other spin-off of that is the healthier you are, and the more you look after your body, the quicker it will go.
I think we said before, there are issues to do with the type of ink that goes in.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's the one question we always get asked, which is so tricky, even after 15 years, is how many sessions will this take to go? And it's a bit like, how long's a piece of string? Because there's so many factors involved. You know, number one, what is the ink? Is it an organic ink? Is it a synthetic ink? Has it got high iron content? Is it mixed with titanium oxide? Is it some strange ink that we don't even know about? A lot of inks out there now actually aren't inks at all. They're pigments in a solution injected into the skin. You know, there's so many different factors. So we don't actually know what we're dealing with. There's been studies on inks as well, when they've looked at the ingredients and then what the actual chemical breakdown is completely different, doesn't match at all because it's not regulated. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. So that's one thing. We don't know what really we're dealing with, you know. It have to be, generally, it has to be dark coloured ink. So sort of your reds, your blacks, your greens, things. Oh, sorry, not greens. Blacks, browns, reds, pinks. It's much more difficult when you've got things like green. You need different sorts of lasers, which are a lot more expensive than the standard sort of 20 to 60,000 pound laser. You're looking more sort of lasers that are costing upwards in excess of 160,000. So they tend not to be as widely available.
Yes.
I'm trying to think in Sussex, I don't think there's one available at all. I think the nearest clinic I know that's got one which will do green, for example, is probably over in Birmingham, around that way.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I'm talking from my own personal experience and knowing a lot of people in the trans community, for instance. During their youth periods, when they start to sort of like reject these emotions they're going through, you know, they get quite manly, get quite steroided up, or have lots of tattoos, and then later on they regret it and they want it removed.
Yeah.
I don't think you sort of consider when you're having a tattoo, I have a nice colourful tattoo with green and red and brown.
Yeah.
And then 30 years later or so, you say, I want this removed. So I didn't realise it'd be such a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the manufacturers can make wild claims on these. You know, lasers that we've bought in the past claim all colours, but the reality is they don't. You know, they may, from a scientific point of view, remove some of the ink, but you'd need so many treatments to get to a point where it's gone. It's really not feasible. Yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky.
Sounds like a minefield. All comes back to experience.
Very much so.
Doing the job itself.
Yeah, very much so.
So that obviously sounds as though it's one of the primary questions.
Yeah, it is. Again, you know, what's the density of the ink like? If we look at a tattoo, you know, when you've got the tribal type tattoos, they're obviously very high density ink, so we've only got to touch that with a laser. The amount of trauma from that exploding ink underneath the skin causes a lot of burning sensation, so pre-cooling is very, very important. Whereabouts is it on the body as well? So, for example, if I've got tattoos up here, that's a great location because gravity, if it's at the bottom, is further away. It's further away from the lymph nodes as well. You know, lots of these things, it's going to be a lot more sensitive if I'm getting a tattoo removed, say, on the inside of my arm here, and the skin will erupt far more than over here. So we can go in at a much sort of higher fluence here than we would here. So there's a lot of different factors. The person's probably the most important factor of all as well. So, for example, you know, how old they are they diabetic? You know, what's their diet like? Do they drink? Do they smoke? There was a study in Italy about 10 years ago that said smoking can make tattoo removal up to 70% less effective. So if you measure that in and then say maybe they like a drink, might be diabetic, all of a sudden it's a real struggle to get rid of it. So, and it makes it difficult. And then there are a lot of people out there that are saying, wild accusations saying, we guarantee removal in 6 sessions, or we guarantee removal. It really, when you look at the science, it doesn't add up.
Well, I think that emphasises this initial consultation is invaluable.
Yeah, definitely.
Because not only for you as a practitioner, but also for the person who's receiving it, can say, okay, it's going to take a lot longer than I actually thought.
Definitely. You know? And it's great because at a consultation, as long as your medical history and everything checks out, we can do some patch tests. And of course, there's no better way to see exactly what the treatment is like and how effective it can be than having a patch test, because you'll experience it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very, very welcome.
Well, that's it, ladies and gentlefolk. I hope you found that as interesting, insightful and helpful as I did. It was a wonderful pleasure doing that interview there with Paul. So if you'd like to find out a little bit more about the company, Skin Beautiful, or actually contact Paul himself, I've left all the details down below in the description. Please, if you're considering IPL or any form of laser treatment, or beauty treatment for that fact, including the removal of those ever so stubborn tattoos there, give them a try, or at least give them a ring. I'm sure you'll get along like a house on fire. So all that really remains for me to say is thank you very much for watching to the end. Stay beautiful, stay safe, and until the next time, bye bye.